Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with a special early edition of the patch 13.24 rundown. Now, this patch goes live on Wednesday, December 6th, and normally I would post this rundown on Sunday, but with the Vegas competition coming up, the Vegas Open will be played on this patch. Wanted to give people as much information as possible early, so if they want to play around with this patch, maybe scrim, all of these changes are on PBE right now. So you could be aware of it and practice for the Vegas Open if you so choose. Again, this is the patch that will be played on the Vegas Open, so kind of an important patch. We wanted to keep things relatively small, but we've seen after launch that the patch has kind of isolated down to a few strategies baked around things like Superfan, Jazz, stuff like that, Ziggs. So keeping the changes relatively small here, but should mix things up and hopefully lead to an even healthier meta as we head into the Vegas Open. So let's jump right in. The first thing is minor. This is barely worth paying attention to, but we've renamed a bunch of the portals. This is mostly to deal with localization and making sure that the strings fit. That's really the motivation behind this. There isn't anything else to that. So we had to change some of the wordings. In English, you might be like, oh, this isn't shorter, but in other languages it is. It's really just about localization. So no other changes other than text here. The other one is for hyper role players. Stage 10 now has 3 additional PvP combat rounds, so you're not going to lead into these weird situations where you're at 18 health and then you go to stage 11 and lose and take 30 damage. That shouldn't be happening, so that will be fixed for hyper role. That's it on the system side. So like I said, nothing major here. On the trait side, 8-bit is a trait that really hasn't taken off. It's kind of hard to play because when you first put it in, it actually does close to nothing, and you have to really ramp it up for it to be valuable, and that ramping can take time. So a lot of the time you're playing down a trait. So we're powering this trait up quite a bit, actually. It's going from 3.5610 to 4.5 7.5 12. Now that's maximum is multiplied by 10, so 45 75 120 at max. For a 4-piece giving you 75% AD, that's pretty high. For comparison, Crowd Diver is 70% damage at 6 right now, so that is a big trait, but it will require stacking. This should be a healthy buff and hopefully make some of the 8-bit lines a little bit more playable. The other thing is that the grand prize score for 6 8-bit, we hear you, it's way too hard to hit. It has been hit, but it is way too hard. It requires too much. We do want to make it hard, but accessible. So we're lowering it quite a bit here. 345,678, a little less than Hyperroll. Again, it's still going to be tough. Honestly, this might even need to come down further, but we want to take it slow. But this should at least, it is 111,000 off, so it should be more achievable if you're trying to go for that. On the nerf side, Country is getting a very small invisible nerf here. The 3-piece, for those who don't know, when Hecarim comes out, he gives your team 20% attack speed. That's going to go down to 15%. Should just help keep early 3 Country in the early game just a little down. No big deal. And the 5-piece gives 20% Omnivamp to all the Country units. It is only the Country units, but that is also going to go down to 15%. Again, should hopefully be kind of barely noticeable, but just the nudge Country needs. Guardian. This is a bigger nerf. Guardian was definitely overstated compared to some of the other survivable traits like Brawler or Bruiser and Sentinel. So Guardian is getting hit. At 2, it's only going to go from 30 to 25. At 4, it's going to go from 50 to 40. And at 6, it's going to go from 70 to 60. This is one of the things that will nerf the Superfan package. Nico and Kennen will get less shields from Guardian. It should make those 4 Guardian mid games actually a little bit more tolerable. So it is going to nerf the Guardian line a bit. Right now, it was kind of the premier front line. Jazz is the other big one. This is a big nerf. This is not a small nerf, but realistically, Jazz was very easy to slot in. We really underestimated how easy it would be to build late game boards that had 7, 8, 9 traits. We've just seen, people buy a lot of the legendaries, optimize with like 2 Rapid Fire, 2 Sentinel, things like that, and then throw in a Misfortune and a Bard or a Misfortune and a Lucian commonly to get that Rapid Fire. And it's just too much power. So we are going to be nerfing it. The HP is the big one because, man, it gives you a lot of HP. Getting upwards of, 40% HP for your entire team is too much. So the HP is going to go down quite a bit here from 234 to 1.523. So again, chunky nerf there. And the damage is also going to go down, but only at 3 and 4. We don't want to nerf too much here, but the damage is going to go from 123 to 1.52. So again, this is a chunky nerf, but it should open up more lines and feel like you don't have to play Jazz in the end game without missing out on massive amounts of stats. So probably the biggest nerf in the patch. With the second biggest nerf being Kennen, because Kennen has another nerf we'll talk about later, but Kennen also got Guardian hit, things like that. Kennen also, for being as tanky as he is providing too much damage because he's also a super fan. He's got that true damage. So the damage is getting about a 10% nerf here. Cassante, definitely one of the weakest front lines in the game right now. We're trying to give him a little less downtime where he's not in that tanky stance. So the mana is going to go from 60 to 40, and he'll slap back a little harder. We're not expecting this to open up like some weird AD build or anything like that, but we do want Cassante to survive a little longer. This should help both Sentinel and Heartsteel especially be able to play around that. Yasuo, we're giving Yasuo a buff. It's a very small one, but again, with Vegas coming up, we couldn't go too big here. So he's getting about a 5% buff on his spell. That's going to go from 275 to 290. Should hopefully make Yasuo a potential option to play, along with some of the other buffs and some of the other nerfs. And then finally, Yone on the 1, 2, and 3 costs. So no 2 costs, but hold on, don't freak out, Katarina people. Yone here is going to get some extra HP, and his spell's going to hit a little harder. Again, very minor buffs here. I actually believe Yone needs a little more than this, but we didn't want to overbuff Heartsteel, and again, Edgelord, same thing. We don't want to like buff Yasuo and Yone and Kayn and go too crazy. So we are going very conservative this patch. Again, that is the big message here, trying to keep it conservative. So small HP buff, small damage buff, hopefully opens up some Yone lines. Doesn't solve all the problems like him having to deal with Thresh plus Echo and just getting stunned to death, things like that. Those will have to wait until after Vegas. All right, 4 costs. This is probably the biggest batch of changes here, and you can see it's a lot of green text. 4 costs right now kind of feel like the cost you skip. Yes, there's the Karthus KDA Akali line, but really other than that, you know, some of the tanks, you kind of skip all these champions. You go straight to 5, or so the level 9, play the 5 cost, things like that. So all of these champions are getting pretty sizable buffs, actually. Akali's going to gain some attack speed, and her spell's going to hit harder. This is the true damage Akali. Caitlyn's spell is going to hit harder. We went light on Caitlyn because she did get that big 8-bit buff, and she's kind of the 8-bit carry. So the combination of those two should help her. Ezreal is getting some more attack speed, so he'll get to his ult quicker. And the single target spell damage is going up. We're not buffing that ult. That ult is really good, but it takes him a little long to get that, so that attack speed should help. Viego, we're buffing the slam damage quite a bit, actually. It is just the slam. Most of his damage is actually the autos afterwards, not the slam. But if you invest AD items on Viego, this should feel rewarding, and that slam should hit hard. And then Zed getting a small buff. Zed is one of those champions that actually does have some playable builds that are pretty hard. So we didn't want to overbuff Zed. He might need more later, especially around EDM. EDM is a trait that has clearly been too difficult to play. But again, with pre-Vegas, want to be conservative. And this is actually mostly to compensate for the Crowd Diver nerf you're going to see later, more than anything else. But again, hopefully some of these AD carries should be playable in the, stage 4-2 to 4-6 kind of area and open up some more lines. And then on the 5 cost side, Kayn, clearly the worst legendary, getting a big chunk of attack speed to help him cast quicker. And the cast is going up, a little bit of damage here, about 5%. So Kayn, again, might need more than this, to be honest. I think that spell damage might need to go up more. But again, don't want to overbuff for Vegas. And then Ziggs, this is the other really big nerf here. 5 more on the mana, which won't affect his Shojin builds, really. But the big one here is he's not going to scale up nearly as fast. Going from 2 to 1 extra small bomb per cast. Pretty big deal here. That is going to nerf Ziggs. So he shouldn't be the best 5 cost far and away anymore. Should still be a 5 cost, should still be valuable, but nothing too crazy. Okay, new category here for this set, headliner bonuses. As I mentioned, one of the cool things about this set this time is that every champion has a unique headliner bonus, and we can balance accordingly around those. So, Kennen, that 4% max heal that he gets per jolt, which means he casts 4 of those jolts usually because you've got his bling bonus activated. He was healing 16% of his health every cast. That's going to go all the way down to 8, 2% per jolt. So that is a nerf. Bard Headliner, very small nerf here. We don't want to overkill this with Jazz. Honestly, this one's debatable, but we just want to be careful. So small nerf to that Headliner Bard only. Base Bard should still be a really cool carry in the early game. He still hits like a truck, but just a bit of a nerf to that. Katarina Headliner. This one was definitely a little over budget. So loses 50 HP, and that final bounce, instead of doing 45% extra damage, is going to do 25% extra damage. But again, Katarina should still be good. We're not nerfing base Katarina, only the Headliner and only a little bit. Misfortune, same thing. Misfortune's traits are so valuable. Big Shot's also getting some buffs through things like 8-bit. We don't want to, and Ezreal, we don't want to over buff Big Shot. So Misfortune AD is going to go down a bit. Samira Headliner's another one. Samira Headliner has that built-in AD plus the crit. The crit really empowers her. We didn't want to take away that. But the AD is going to go down to 5%. She's still a great champion, but we also don't want to nerf base Samira. We think that champion's fine. Headliner Set. This is a nerf from 250 to 150, but it's mostly compensation for the fact we actually fixed his Headliner. It will now stack and give HP. So overall, Set Headliner should be better, not worse. You'll actually get to take advantage of that. So just compensation there. Zac Headliner is going to get 50 more HP and 5 more AP. So if you want to go Zac Headliner, that should be a little bit better. And then Ziggs, kind of a second nerf here. The 10 mana reduction is going to go down to 5. So what this really means is Headliner Ziggs went from 60 mana to 70 mana. So Headliner Ziggs taking a big chunk. So 10 less mana plus the less bombs per cast should make Ziggs a little bit more balanced. And again, all of these, could we go harder? Maybe. But pre-Vegas, we don't want to be rapidly shifting the meta. So we're going to do this for Vegas and then reevaluate after. All right, on the Augment side, not a lot of crazy stuff here. Good for Something 1 has been nerfed because we did bug fix it, for those who correctly called this. It is dropping at 50%, not the intended 30%. We fixed that bug. Reach the Summit now grants 10 gold and 50 XP. It felt a little weird to just get the XP and nothing to play with here, so it will grant 10 gold. Young, Wild, and Free now correctly drops gold. The tooltip says drops 3 gold, but it never did. So it is a buff, but it's already an augment that can do very well. So we're just lowering it to 2 gold. So overall, it went from 0 to 2 gold. It is technically buffed. Bigger Shot. This is a pretty big nerf. There was a bug where, Bigger Shot says 65% damage on that AoE, but it was also hitting the primary target for an extra 100%. That bug has been fixed. So this augment has been nerfed because that bug has been fixed. Live for Danger. This is the Edgelord augment. Has been buffed from 30% to 40%. Sorry, the color is wrong here. That's a buff, not a nerf. Live for Danger has been buffed. My bad. Ramping Rhythm. This is a weird augment that allows your rapid fires to stack all the way up to 30 stacks. It's really fun when it works, but it doesn't give you any initial power, which is pretty bad. So now it's going to start you at 3 stacks immediately. So if you've got 4 rapid fire, this augment starts you at 21% attack speed and then ramps up all the way up to 30 stacks. So that should make this augment a little bit better if you want to play a rapid fire build. Submit to the Pit. All the stats given to Moshers goes from 3 to 5. Pretty big buff for that augment, but kind of underperforming anyway. That's Jazz Baby. Probably one of the most overtuned augments combined with the trait here. But even with the trait nerf, this augment was still giving way too much value comparatively to other augments, especially gotten at 2-1. The cap was just way too high. So we're actually lowering the HP in half. You're going to have a lot less HP from this augment, but only the attack speed going down 1% here, so nothing too crazy. And we're not actually nerfing the AD and AP. So you can definitely still make a really powerful Misfortune if you want to play this augment, but it isn't going to be a 34% win rate augment. So that should help. Binary Airdrop, very good augment, has been overperforming for a while. Now instead of granting a component, we'll grant 2 gold. That is a nerf. Endless Hordes, really doing well this set, especially with Jazz. Yes, Jazz has been nerfed, but the augment still will probably overperform. So we're lowering the HP reduction from 15% to 20%. Going Long now grants 8 gold immediately. Kind of a weaker March of Progress right now. Might still be, but at least the 8 gold will give you an option to power level and get ahead of that curve. So there should be a pretty big buff for Going Long. And then Infernal Contract, we're just giving 15 more gold. This is an augment that also kind of struggles, especially with some of the 3 costs. But at least having a little extra gold to roll might guarantee you hit some of those 3-star 3 costs that you're playing with this comp. All right, traits. Some small trait changes, very tiny things here. Bruiser definitely underperforming at 4 and 6. People love playing 2. That 100 health matters a lot. But for, especially with Alawi, who's an amazing champion. But 4 and 6 not really worth playing. Again, because it's Vegas, going very light for now. Probably needs more than this. I don't think this is magically going to make Bruiser meta, but hopefully should at least make it not a bait to play it, especially like 4 early. I imagine 4 Bruiser should be pretty good in the early game. Crowd Diver definitely caps out a little high at 6, so the 6 piece is being nerfed down to 60%. And then Executioner. This is one that I think for those of you who are like, hey, Akali and Karthus might need nerfs, this is kind of the Akali Karthus nerf that you're going to see. 2 Executioner was the big nerf we were aiming for here, going from 15 to 5%. Just the critical strike damage, not the chance, so Samira should still be fine and get those crits she needs. But then we had to nerf 4 because like going from 5 to 30 was too big a jump. So it's 5, 25, 45. If you want to go deep, Executioner should be fine. Again, may need some follow-up buffs to things like Twitch or Vex. But for now, this was what we needed for the Vegas. Finally, on the champ small side, for those of you that were looking for an Annie nerf, we don't actually think Annie needs that big a nerf, but it is way too easy to get a Shojin, a Nasher, and then a second Shojin from Superfan and play that really well early. So we're nerfing her by changing her Superfan item from Spear of Shojin to Jeweled Gauntlet. Jeweled Gauntlet is not an optimal item for her. It's okay, but this shouldn't help you get best in slot as quick and easily, and that should be all the nerfs she needs for now for Vegas, so the Annie line should still be playable. And then Ahri. Ahri is one that if you hit 3-star Ahri and got 6th place, not calling out anyone in particular or myself or anything, you know that Ahri's big weakness is even if she was hitting for 10,000 damage, she still has to go one target at a time, and that can be too slow, especially with things like Alawi Tentacles, things like that. So now 3-star Ahri will fire 2 projectiles per cast, so allowing her to like actually mow through multiple things. This should be a pretty big buff. Obviously, we had to nerf the damage to compensate. We didn't even nerf it half though, so overall this is still a buff to Ahri. But she should actually be able to like get through teams quite a bit quicker now if you hit 3-star Ahri. All right, and then bug fixes. A lot of bug fixes. Try to go through these quick here. Fixed an issue where sometimes Alawi would revive 2 tentacles with her cast instead of 1. Teaming up 1 now correctly grants 2 3 costs instead of 3, so that is a nerf to that augment. Akali properly combines when your bench is full. The Showtime portal is now available in Hyperroll. Radiant item portal now displays the correct round in its tooltip in Hyperroll. Gambler's Blade and Diamond Hands now properly work in the artifact pool and are affected by things like Reforger, Pandora's items. Kiana can no longer give units invisible 4th items. Your KDA pattern no longer changes after triggering Last Stand. Augment Little Buddies now works with True Damage Akali. She wasn't counting as a 4 cost for some reason. Wellness Fund, Risky Moves, and Tiniest Titan have been removed from the double up augment pool. Gambler's Blade now correctly works in Hyperroll and uses the Hyperroll values. Using an item remover on a champion without enough empty item bench slots will now correctly bounce off rather than removing as many items as possible. Headliner sets permanent health now functions. Called that out earlier. Poros on Poro Ranger HQ no longer disappear when zooming in. Health bar no longer blocks Chibi Kaisa when performing some of her emotes. For all Prancy's Angry Mark VFX are fixed, so if you're a Prancy Little Legend fan. Blank Slate should no longer sell Tome of Traits on the bench. Submit to the Pit now only applies to Moshers. Apparently it was applying to your whole team. Not that that made the augment any good, but at least now it applies to what it says it does. Blinged Out now counts full benefits for Thieves Gloves. It was counting as 1 item. Now it counts as 3. And then hopefully this one coming in a little hot here, but double up, we should have fixed the issue where crowd divers would become invulnerable for the rest of combat. Now again, this is generally a small patch, but things like the Jazz, the Guardian, the Kennen, the Ziggs, the Annie changes should be enough to shake up the meta a bit in a healthy state, plus those 4 cost buffs. And again, we're purposely being a little conservative. Now, for those of you that aren't participating in the Vegas Open, a reminder that we are going to ship another patch on December 13th, give or take. You can call that patch 1324B. It's almost a 1325 for all intents and purposes, but there will be one more bigger balance change before we head to the holidays that will include some more buffs to things, try to get even more lines viable, and allow us to react to Vegas. But again, we wanted to get this out here so that people participating in the Vegas Open could know what's going on and not drastically change things 2 days before a big event. So, and there you go. All right. So, like I said, Patch goes live December 6th. Hopefully everybody enjoys. Cool. Can't wait to see everybody at the Vegas Open. It's going to be a blast. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.